Is this the one? G'day guys, and welcome to the next episode of the Two Red Chairs podcast. I'm your host Frank, and today I have an interesting conversation ahead of us because, and quite literally, only a few hours ago, I reached out to my next guest, Mia from Idiello, who had put up a post saying that she'd had a particularly bad experience with a Facebook group. And I've had the same experience, unfortunately. And I said to Mia, what happened? I want to know more because I want to know if this is the same experience. And to introduce Mia before we get into it, Mia has her own platform. It's a marketing platform for people to, or her clients to realize their marketing dreams in a DIY kind of sense. It is called Idiello. I'll get Mia to introduce it more at the end of the conversation so you can find a bit more about that. But she has 20 years of experience in this space. She knows what's up, more than I do, put it that way. And from a marketing or a branding perspective, I think this conversation will be quite helpful if you do have a community or you are part of a community. I mean, I have one of my own now as well as part of G'day Design Life, and I'm always teetering on the edge of knowing what is the best thing for my community over what's the best interest for me. So Mia, welcome. How are you doing?
Very well. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. Now, let's go back to, when was it that this happened?
It was yesterday.
Yesterday. Okay, so it's pretty fresh, and this is exactly why I wanted to do it like today, if we could. So, what happened? We don't need to talk about the specific group or the person that you dealt with, but let's get some context here.
Sure. So, I was a member of this Facebook group. And I advertised 2 jobs that I'm hiring for in the group. And the reason why I did that was that I saw that other people had been posting jobs in the group. And then the next morning, my post had been taken down and it had been marked as self-promotion, which is fine. However, I did see a double standard there. And usually I would just scroll on by and not bother, just because I have received a crazy amount of applications for this job. But I don't know what possessed me. I decided to contact the brand custodian of this Facebook group and just mention very gently that there were some double standards, and I screenshotted some examples. The conversation then turned to the fact that she was using the group to advertise jobs, and she felt she was well within her right to do that because it was her group. And then I think that that's where I have the issue, is that Facebook groups are not your groups, they're communities. And marketers need to stop using them like that. Facebook pages are business orientated. We know that. And the algorithm shows us that that's exactly how people are using them. But Facebook groups are supposed to be interest orientated. They're supposed to be for discussions. So I wanted to draw this to her attention, and it ended up very badly. So she disagreed that she gets to create the rules, but that she doesn't have to follow them. And I just have an I just have an ideological problem with that. It's like, you get to make the rules, but then you also get to follow them. And look, I have no problem with her advertising in her own group. I don't see why she has a problem with other people advertising jobs in her group. The thing is that Facebook groups are usually set up from a marketing perspective to be a member benefit. So, you sign on to a subscription, to a product or a service, and as a benefit, you get to access this closed Facebook community.
Yeah, it's like that extra added value to the experience.
Correct.
Yeah.
I can't think of a better member benefit than a job opportunity.
Yeah.
So it ended badly in that she turned a private message into a public humiliation.
Shit.
And then she kicked me out of the group so that I had no right to reply. And this is why I really wanted to have this discussion with you, because it just seems like we're being silenced.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is probably the thing. Like, I don't want to sit here and be the moral police of what you should and shouldn't do. Like, at the end of the day, like, the perspective is that I'm the king of the castle. This is my castle. This is my rules. I'll change my mind. I'll be the Henry VIII and just off with your head kind of thing. That's not the greatest mentality, though, I think, to have in a conducive environment as, you know, presenting a group as a community. If that's how it's been presented. If things change over time, be upfront with that. Like that's I think my perspective here is that if you do pivot and this becomes something that does become realistically a job for you to maintain, make it as such so that way people's expectations of what they're getting themselves into is realistically conveyed. To have a to share a job opportunity that, quickly, if we rewind as well, what was the purpose of this group?
Business mums who were business owners.
Okay.
Yeah.
So business owners, they might want to hire their own staff, know how to hire people, that, you know, all this kind of thing, or they might not even be a business owner but want to aspire to be, or who knows.
Yeah.
I can see a potential there in that if you were a business owner and you're obviously not going to be looking for a job, but you are offering a job, there may be, and I'll be in devil's advocate here, that there is potential where it may not be fitting, maybe, let's say, to the purpose of the group, but to go to the lengths of what has happened and has eventuated out of the discussion that you've had with her is significantly unfortunate. From a perception standpoint. Like, if you named it right now, and we named and shamed, which we're not going to do, but if we named and shamed and did that for that particular group would do irrevocable harm, that, you know, and that's what you're dancing with, is if you do call it out, it may leave a bad taste in someone's mouth that will then tell someone else, that then will tell someone else, that then will tell someone else. And someone's going to be more, I think, at least, more motivated to share a negative experience than a positive experience. I mean, if you had a good experience with this group, we wouldn't be talking now. So, like, if you are a community group, or, you know, you're a mentor, or you're a coach, or whatever, there's such a fine line, I guess, to tread. But realistically, it should be a very easy line to tread, because you are there for the benefit of your member. Yeah?
I think so. And I've got some tips on how we approach it and how other people can approach it. And no, we're not going to name and shame, because then that's not going to give her the right of reply. And I think that was really the straw that broke the camel's back yesterday, which was that I wanted to engage in a discussion. I wanted to debate the issue. I believe in a marketplace of ideas. I don't believe in just surrounding yourself with people who agree with you. That's not how we're going to learn and grow. And that's exactly what we need right now, is to be open-minded and to learn from other people so that we can learn and grow. But I just felt very shut down. And I don't think that sends a very good example to her community, but to other female entrepreneurs. Like, we have a responsibility.
I think you do. As the leader of that group, like, that's what you sign up for, really, as to be like the pinnacle of whatever you've got below you, kind of thing. But in terms of my respect for this, I align it very similarly to, you know, being a CEO of a business. Many CEOs are at the top of the food chain, but there is a new wave of CEO that I've found, and I met a bloke that runs, actually, I think he's the CEO of Bridge Climb in Sydney. And he's an American bloke, but runs Sydney Bridge Climb. And he has a very different way where he turns that pyramid upside down. He is at the bare bottom. It's like, how can I help you to be better, kind of thing? And if every, I guess, community manager or owner or admin, whatever you want to call them, had that mentality of, how can I do better? I'm not going to sleep at night until you are happy, you have got something out of this, whether it's free or not. That's what I'm like consistently thinking about with my group. I feel bad that I charge people to come into my community. It's $36 a year Australian. It's less than a case of beer. It's $3 a month. It's like bargain cheap. But for me, it was just a barrier to entry to make sure you were serious about engaging in that group. A Facebook group is a little bit different, where it's free for all. You can come in, everybody, all and sundry can come in. You answer a couple of questions and you're in, kind of thing.
I think that's a brilliant way of managing the size of a group.
Sure.
Because, and look, this is not an isolated incident. This experience that I had and you had with a community manager, I'm hearing a lot from people that there is a growing mistrust of Facebook communities. They used to be awesome. You could go and find your tribe and, you know, other mums trying to hustle business or other designers, and it was a safe space to have a rant, and you could talk to a designer from another part of the world and just say, oh, how do you deal with this tricky client? You know, how would you charge for this? Is this ad hoc? Is this out of scope? You know, all of that. It was really, really great. And there are still some amazing Facebook communities. Like,
oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah,
no
Future
doubt.
Women is one of them. But again, you pay to go in. It's $1 a week. But it helps keep that community small so that the administrators can manage the group without over policing it. Because one of the excuses that I hear from community managers when anyone does say, call them out, like, why did my post get deleted, but this post didn't get deleted? They're like, oh, we are doing the best we can. Things have slipped through the cracks. You know, this is a huge job. It's like, I'm sorry, but if you've made it, if you've built it, you need to be able to manage it. And I think that that's true for everything. I think that that's true for Facebook communities, but I also think it's true for your platform. If you are Instagram and you built the Instagram platform, I don't think it's acceptable that there is racism on your platform, but that you just throw your hands up and say, oh, this is bigger than all of us now. Whoa.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, if the community wants to talk about these things, then they rightly should. If you don't want to be a part of that community chat and you're a community member, let's say, and you don't want to be a part of that chat, there's no obligation for you to put your 2 cents into that issue or topic of conversation. Let it play out, kind of thing, and let it be a learning point for somebody. Or if people butt heads, then, you know, you come in and be a mediator. You don't have to put on your own, you know, I guess... I mean, you can add your own 2 cents to the conversation, but I think, you know, disagreeing with somebody is fine. You can agree to disagree with somebody. But to take it to the step further, which would escalate the situation into a very sour moment of your community, hopefully it becomes a learning point for this individual that you've, you know, engaged with here. But it doesn't sound like it probably will be. Because
I think you're completely right. You don't need to swing at every ball.
And that's it. And this was my experience that I had with a Australian-based group that was, you know, for freelancers, of all kind of types, not just, you know, designers like myself. And the context for me was that I was in the throes of setting up my business. So I hadn't actually set up my business. This was a couple of years ago. And I was learning like everything possible about business, about legal stuff, accountancy. Like, so everything was just fresh, and it was all very good and valid information. And so when people were asking in the group about certain questions about, you know, contracts, like all the standard kind of stuff that everyone has problems with, and I had the answer because I'd come across that problem in creating my contract, or if it was my accounting stuff or whatever. And I was like a fiend on a group, not replying to everything in it, but just like trying to absorb problems, learn from other people to get their perspectives. And these particular admins weren't happy that I was offering this advice, that I wasn't a legal advisor, or I wasn't a financial advisor, or I wasn't a HR person or whatever. It's just like, no, I'm sharing my opinions just the same as the rest of your group is sharing their opinions. Why am I different? And then so this individual, they searched me up to make sure that I was a business owner, looked up the ABN lookup to see if I had a registered business number or whatever, and then disguised it by saying, oh, I just saw an article about the Australian government deregistering businesses that weren't active. I'm like, oh yeah, sure you were. You were looking me up to make sure I was legitimate. And that was like kind of the first kind of straw, I think, for her. And then these other ones came up, and then I had a very similar experience to you where someone put up a post that was asking for feedback of a design or something. And me being a designer, I was like, look, I can offer my feedback here, but I know it's a point of this group based on other instances where someone has put up their own work and asked for critique, that you've taken it down or you've closed off comments and said, we're not doing design by committee here, which isn't a great way of going about design anyway. It's like throwing meat to a lion's den. You're never going to get good context. And I called it out along with another member and just said, why is this allowed? Why are we having a discussion about this when this is something that you've closed down before or asked people not to do? Why is this still playing out? And it was just this back and forward between the admins, and it was two different people. And I just said, look, what's the deal here? And then they sent me a message and just said, mate, just leave it. Like, let it die. And I was like, let it die? This is a discussion here. Why, are you the ruler of all things, great here, and you don't have the answers. You're not offering your answers here. I'm giving a perspective here. This person can take it or leave it. Do their due diligence and take it with a grain of salt kind of thing. They're grown-ups, they're adults, they run a business, they've made the decision to do it. They're in a group that's asking for opinions. Come on.
Yeah, I think it really stems from the root problem, which is that they're seeing these groups as theirs, that they're entitled to them. And they're not seeing them as they're intended, which is to be interest-based communities for discussion. And they're using them like they're using a branded marketing channel.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is that people are going to grow very weary of that. They already have, and they're going to start leaving. And then we're not going to have these awesome spaces, and people are just going to become disillusioned and not trust these communities.
Exactly.
And I'm already hearing it. People are saying, I post advice, it gets deleted. I share ideas, it gets deleted. I'm not engaging with these groups anymore. And I think that would be a loss.
Yeah. To be honest, I hear more bad things about Facebook groups especially than good things. And I don't know whether it's the individual that runs them or just the group dynamic of too many people that just brings the house down kind of thing. I suspect it's a bit of a combination of many different things, because I don't think there's no point pinpointing it. But if you do have some overarching ruler of all things them, then it's not a good and conducive thing. And as you said, I think it's 100% some kind of underlying mentality that people don't want to say that that's what a group is for, but it becomes it very, very slowly as something that's improving their brand stead, so that way they can push on their products, they can push on their affiliate links and all that kind of stuff. And I see that in so many groups where it's just pushed like it's like a sales channel, whereas you may as well just have a Facebook page instead and people follow that. If you only want to put out your word and not have other people either debate that or be opposed to it or question it or whatever, or add their own 2 cents in perspective, then you may as well have a Facebook page.
Yeah.
You may as well just have an Instagram page that just puts out your verbatim.
It's a sort of a loophole around the algorithm, isn't it? Because if you are in a Facebook group, those members are going to see much more of your content than in a public face. So they're using it the wrong way. This is not how Facebook intended for it to be used. And people are going to flock away from that. So I think it's dangerous from a few perspectives. First of all, it's not good marketing, because all marketing should be customer centric. And this isn't good for customers. You withholding employment opportunities from your members because I don't know why, because your jobs, you want to use this group for your pool of talent, and you don't want to share those people with anybody else. Like, you built that community over time and they're your people.
Yeah, please.
Very practical to me. So there's, I don't think that's good marketing. And it's, we're already seeing that sentiment. But then it's also really not good from a wider community issue, because these groups are becoming echo chambers where it's just full of people who all agree with the same ideologies. And they're just sitting there going, yeah, you're the best. No, you're the best. And
it's what you'd call in a male-centric circle of a circle jerk, basically. Like, to be crass, I know, I'm sorry, but that's what it kind of feels like. It takes the wind out of anyone else that has, like, this is the thing, like, you might have the same ideologies of a lot of different things, but when it starts to differ about a certain topic, and then, gears get grinded, and you're just like, wait a second, what? And then it all comes down.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it seems like they're afraid of that discussion because they're worried it's going to get out of hand, and that, they're stretched thin in resources. It's not their primary job to police this, and they don't want the discussion. But Facebook groups are for the discussion. So if you can't manage it, don't build it. I've heard recently of a very sad story of a Facebook group for another female entrepreneur sort of brand. And women of color were posting in the group about Black Lives Matters conversations. And the administrator, not wanting to go there, was deleting the posts. And that has blown back very badly for her. Thankfully, her audience stood up to her and said, no, this is not on. You don't get to control all the conversations. That's why Facebook has made it possible for anyone to post in a Facebook group.
Sure.
Whereas on a Facebook page, those posts go off to the side, where it's contributor posts. But in a group setting, anyone can run a poll. Anyone can start a discussion, and they should. And so this particular Facebook group saw a mass exodus of her followers, and she's had to completely rebuild her empire and go back to her group with her tail between her legs, saying, clearly I was out of line. I'm now going to undergo some sensitivity training. I'm going to look at recruiting more women of color and ethnicities into my organization so that I can understand this. So I think that this may seem a bit sort of silly that I had a run-in with someone yesterday, but it's a bigger issue, which is maybe why I didn't just walk away yesterday and decided to I thought what I saw was a clever, influential woman, and we could engage in a very respectful discussion together on an issue, and that's not
the case. And I think that's the most unfortunate thing, is that it does, like, if it does come to a point where a learning opportunity does happen and they have to walk away with their tail between their legs and come back to the group and just say, look, I fucked up here. I've done wrong here. And look, to be totally honest with you, I did the same thing the other day, and not of my own realization that I was being potentially misogynistic. I was talking about me doing push-ups and that my arms were girly. And to a few people, that didn't come across as very well received. And I had conversations with those individuals. I advised them that was my intention at all. I'm talking about myself. I think it's far from the point that what I was trying to make was this was about mental health. If I've offended you in some way, I am sorry about that. And then made the point to publicly apologize, not to the persons or people specifically, but if they saw that post, and do it of my own accord, not until someone starts going, hey buddy, you need to start doing this. It was the wrong call, but to own up to it of your own accord, like, immediately.
Yeah.
Not take the time and go, nah, you're all idiots, whatever. This is, totally acceptable. And I got the perspectives of, that particular scenario, from different women, people that know me very well, some people that know me on a surface level, and especially the people that weren't too happy with what I'd said. And I educated myself very, very quickly in that scenario, because it was a smaller than what the big conversation is that's happening now with Black Lives Matter, but it still was potentially hurtful.
Yeah.
And I've heard of this same instance that you've seen in this particular other group, where that owner of that group didn't take it well and didn't want to have the conversation about what is going on in society at the moment, to her detriment. And it brings her brand down as well. And so if you're looking at it, like, this is the thing, like, if you're looking at your brand, like your branded, your community as a branded opportunity, and you are going in with a false perception of who you are trying to, engage with here and what the conversation is, it is going to be to your branded detriment.
I think you need to be really clear about the purpose of your group.
Yeah.
And, just like with your brand, you need to have a very clear brand voice, brand identity, and say, okay, we have a Facebook group, and it is the place for DIY marketers. So if the topic is DIY marketing, go for it. This is not a group for anything beyond that, but if you want help to DIY your marketing or advice, or you want to connect with other people DIYing their marketing, go for it. And that doesn't have to involve Idiello. We are not the solution to everybody's problems. Yeah. There's a lot of responsibility to bring these people together. And, you don't have to be the unicorn that rides in and
saves everyone's day.
Saves everyone's day. You're just facilitating this discussion. And it's a beautiful thing because, let's be honest, community managers benefit greatly from these groups. The algorithm is such that organic reach on Facebook is essentially dead. So the only way you are going to reach people is through Facebook groups. So they're benefiting. They're definitely, these groups are filled with their most loyal advocates, their evangelists. There's lots of benefits for the community manager. It can't be a one-way street. Yeah.
And this is my thinking, especially with I'm thinking in comparison between the community that I have, and we've only got like 15. I think we've got 18 members now as of today, because I did a bit of a push yesterday for it to have some more members. Having it such a tight-knit thing that everyone's for each other, and no matter if you're going through an absolute crap time or a really good time, or you've got something to share, or you've got a problem that you want some advice on, everyone is there to help. We haven't had an instance yet where people just start disagreeing on things yet, and I'm waiting for that opportunity, that instance to happen, to use it as an opportunity to really set the tone for what this group actually is, because if it thrives in adversity, then it will thrive at any stage. Whereas you see, like I see a lot of design groups, and they're just like, there are thousands of people. Some of them have 100,000 people in them. And it's just, like I said before, throwing, meat into a lion's den, where you never know what you're going to get back. You could put in something that looked really good. It was very altruistic, like for a greater good kind of thing. And then people just tear it apart for whatever reason, which they're entitled to. But more often than not, it's potentially harmful to that person that's put it up. It's never really well received. And unless you are somebody that has such a good standing in that community that everyone kind of looks to as a sub-admin or someone like that, everyone knows and gets. And the admins are in cahoots kind of with.
There's so much favoritism, don't you think?
And there is. I think there definitely is.
Yeah.
It's the people that show up, obviously, more and more, that obviously get the favoritism. That's human nature. I don't see why that doesn't occur. I think it's just more being open to someone that does come in new, that their opinion is just as valid.
That's exactly right. One of the things that happened yesterday was when I said that she humiliated me. How did she do that? She called out the number of members I had in my Facebook group versus the number of members in my Facebook group. So,
oh my God.
Who was I, a marketing professional of 20 years, to, dare question how to run a Facebook group when I only have 230 members and she has 15,000. But by that same logic, Donald Trump must be the most worthwhile voice to listen to. I'm sorry, but you do not measure your worth by your social media followers.
Exactly.
And I really feel that this is an abuse of power. We need to have an opportunity where people can speak truth to power and not get shut down.
And this is my concern, I think, as well, for people that do have a following, not just in a group kind of community here, but even like a following that do, some go viral, some have very quick increases in growth of their account. I see it all too often in the design space because everyone puts out, carousel after carousel, and they just go, whew, depending on their topic of conversation that they focus on. It doesn't mean that they're right either. It doesn't mean that they are the person that has all the answers or that they know what they're talking about. They just struck a chord in one way, shape, or another, and people started listening. They might turn around and be, I don't know, the most racist person ever, or the most, controversial person that they've ever come across, if they really understood who their personality was. They just put on a facade. And that's the scary thing about, I think, media spaces, is that you don't really know who you're engaging with half the time, or if not most of the time. So to have, this is my big takeaway of that experience of being knocked out of the group I was that I know now that person doesn't have all the answers. Nowhere near it. And I could easily go back into that group and say, hey, look at my business now. You thought I didn't have a business at all. I've grown a business now in 2 years that has turned over more than I have probably in 10 years. And, here's my middle finger kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's a growth point for, I think, the two of us to go through something like this. I hazard a guess you probably will be thinking about this for weeks to come, as I did. But I wonder what would be some points if you are thinking about having a community, or you have one already, to keep in mind for what the benefit is to your community, to your audience, to your members, whatever it is. Why start one? Why have one? Why, why, basically.
Sure. Yeah. And look, I am less angry with this specific example, but more so with the state of discourse in Australia. Like I feel like we've lost our way in many regards, not just this one particular instance. But yes, I do have some tips from a strategic marketing perspective on how to build a community that is very much a community benefit group. So make it as big as you can manage it and no more.
Yes.
For example, like you said, put a small fee to it, or access to the group is only for paying customers, or just don't overly promote it. Like what we do, we just are very, we want a small group, so we just don't talk about it all that much. And then as a result, our die-hard brand evangelists who follow everything that we say, then they see it and they want to be part of it. Then stop thinking about these groups as an owned channel. It is not an owned channel, and think of it as a community. And just because you made the rules doesn't mean that you don't get to follow them. And then leading by example. I don't think you need a lot of rules if you just set the tone. That's your job, is you set the tone. I mean, yes, we have a much smaller Facebook group, but we've never had an issue just because, we lead by example, I think.
On that point, though, as well, this is my biggest red flag for seeing a Facebook group, is when you go into a Facebook group, especially a private one, before you go in there, you see like page rules or whatever. If there is a page rule set that is a laundry list, like a shopping list of both Aldi, Coles and Woolies mixed together, that's some serious red flags being thrown up, because there is some problems in that group that just can't be solved.
Yes, I agree. Another tactic that I've seen is that they do sort of like a spring clean every couple of months. And they'll say, all right, if you're interested in staying in this group and you're still engaging,
post this comment. Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of that, but it is a way of keeping the group small. But I completely agree with you that if you need to go to town with the rules and then over police it, I don't think you've done a good enough job at setting the tone of the group, or the group has just become way too big and it's not contained. Bring it back to the core purpose of the group. Make it smaller, break it off into smaller groups and go, all right, we tried to be too many things. We're going to have a branch here, which is just for DIY marketing. This one is for DIY accounting. This one is for DIYing your something else.
Exactly. That's why I didn't choose a Facebook group.
Yeah.
I found this other platform, Mighty Networks, that does allow you to kind of silo the conversations where necessary, if needed. It hasn't got there yet because the group isn't that big. If it did ever get to that big, I would take people and not move them into there, but move those discussion points into places that are a bit more specific and tailored.
Yeah.
So that way it just doesn't become a big loss of, huge amount of information. I quickly want to go back to that other point you made about spring cleaning. Like a better way of doing that, and just this was off the top of my head immediately, was creating content that is engaging, like more engaging than just saying, how's everyone's week going? What's your week goals or whatever? Like having something that's a bit more engaging rather than threatening to throw people out of your group that have chosen to be there by saying, if you don't comment now, I'm going to kick you out kind of thing.
Yeah.
What is that? That's
it's
like
not good for introverts. I mean, I'm a raging extrovert, so that's okay for me. I also spend a great deal of time on social media because I'm a marketer, but there are people that only do it, on the weekends, or they're only on social media for 15 minutes a day, and I'm very envious of those people.
Yeah, and some people just want to sit back and watch.
Yes.
Like I saw a story. I don't know if you know Jara. She's from a girl named Jara from Socials by Jara, or SBJ Studios, and she was talking about her business turning 2, which is fantastic for her. She's a young girl. She's doing so well, and she had someone reach out on her 2nd birthday to say, I've been following you from day 1, but this person had never interacted with her ever in a comment, might have liked a post maybe here or there, but nothing to show her interest in Jara or Jara's business. And she was like, you're never going to know ultimately who is listening unless they comment or like, but it doesn't mean someone isn't listening either. Someone could be very dormant, but still just observing, listening, watching, and that's the way that they operate.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had that too, where someone has emailed me with a speaking opportunity and said, I've been following you for ages. I love what you do. And I wanted a speaker for my marketing talk. And I instantly thought of you. I'm like, I don't know who you are.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, sure you have, kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
This is very exciting, but the Facebook name is different from their actual name, and I'm just like, okay. And it just goes to show exactly what you said, that just because as you mentioned earlier, the people who are going to comment are the people who are going to be like, oh, definitely, and I've got your back, and I can't believe this happened to you. But what about the part of your community that is feeling marginalized? Is like, actually, I don't think that you handled that well. They need an opportunity, a way to be able to mention that to you without
fear of retribution, basically. In this instance, retribution, but like ramifications really of
getting thrown out of a group because you disagree with her.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think you really need to have an open door or open messenger browser policy where you say, look, if I say anything that you don't agree with, I really need you to call me out on it. I don't profess to know everything, so I think that that's a much better way of handling it.
Yeah, I think that comes with the territory of putting yourself out publicly in general anyway. Like if you're not prepared to handle somebody coming back at you with something that they disagree on with you specifically, you need to be prepared to handle that. If you're not, then you shouldn't be probably operating something like this.
Yeah, that's true. Exactly like you did with your arm comment. You spoke, and you didn't try to make excuses or cover it up, or you just said, I misspoke. And people, I think that if you own your mistakes, they are so human.
Yeah. And if you wanted to look at it from a brand perspective, if you're all about your business and your brand, and effectively that page of mine is my business, I can't let that die because of one, unfortunate word that I would use that offends people. It does so much better for me and my business to go back and call myself out, basically, and say, you're an idiot, kind of thing, and be open and honest. A lot of people can't do that. And maybe that's their personality, that's their nature, that they have a bit too much pride, whatever it is. But I think it perpetuates itself more so in a Facebook group because it's not as public, let's say. It is a bit more confined to that particular group. And people can say whatever they want, and you can be a he said, she said kind of thing, but you know what's up though. That's the thing.
Yeah, maybe people don't put their foot in their mouth as much as I do. I'm very used to back
And yeah,
down.
I mean, I hear, and I don't want to say this is a female's Facebook specific problem either, but the females that women that I do talk to about their interactions with like boss mum kind of, mentality type groups, is there just a free for all of either negativity or that's not good enough or this and that, and it just doesn't sound conducive really at all for the people that are in it, kind of thing, and it's not fostering a great relationship either with your members or between your members, that is there for the purpose that it is to be, boss mums, boss women, whatever it is.
Are you saying that women are control freaks? I don't know what you're talking
No, because men would be exactly the same as well. Because the Facebook groups that I'm a part of are predominantly more male skewing, I guess you could say, because basically the admins are males, and probably I would have to guess 70% of them would be males, just the same as I attract 70% males on my Instagram accounts. That it's a male skewing conversation, so there's a bit of tension there a lot of the time because men are pretty outspoken when it comes to something. I don't like that. That's fucking shit. Whatever. And are totally abrasive in that way in some respects. But I don't hear good. This is the thing for both gender. I don't think it's a gender conversation here, but it's there's just nothing really conducive if it's a siloed affair of either a conversation that you want to have, or if it's a silo of a demographic that you have. If you could, I think that, would you agree that the point is to maybe have something that's open and honest conversation throughout, have a pinpointed target of what the group's purpose is, but still allow it to go in whatever direction, kind of like a tree.
Yeah.
Tree wants to go upwards, but let it branch out, kind of, for God's sake.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you don't get to, yes, you can set the group's purpose, but you can't then be like, oh, this is now going in a way that I don't want it to go. It has to naturally evolve. You can't be in control of every conversation. Yeah, I really think it comes back to not using it as a branded marketing channel, just being interest-based and really not having to swing at every ball. Like, let some discussions happen, let some things go through to the keeper. And as long as people are not racist or sexist or rude or I think that's really your only rule, is that be a decent human being, otherwise you're out. Otherwise, please feel free to talk about anything that you want to talk about with regards to this particular purpose.
For sure.
Yeah.
Might be the last point we talk about quickly, is if your group does go in a bit of a different direction than what you hope it would, how do you steer the ship realistically to make sure it just doesn't start dying a slow death kind of thing, where it goes in a very different direction, and you say, look, like, is it just coming out openly and honestly and saying, hey guys, I've let our conversations go the way that they have organically done so. I want to know from your perspective, is this something where you want to keep it going, or do we want to rein it back to what the North Star we had to begin with here was? This is totally up to you. If it goes away from this, I'm probably not so inclined to keep this particular group going, or I more prefer to move that way. If you don't want to be a part of that, then this is your opportunity. Or like, what does that look like? What would be, from your perspective, the best way to handle that?
Well, I mean, in reality, the administrators or the brand custodians are starting about 95% of the conversations in these groups.
Sure.
So I think that I haven't heard of a group going in a particular direction that has not been set by the administrator. Certain discussions would happen, but that's okay. Not every single thing has to fit with your ideology. That is being quite a control freak. But yeah, like, just like you need a content strategy for your public channels, so your Instagram and your Facebook and your Pinterest, you absolutely need a content strategy for your community. And in many ways, managing a community is a bigger job. So, so don't just go and start a Facebook page, a Facebook group, sorry, without it really thinking about how you're going to manage that, how many hours a week you're going to invest in that, because it does come with a great deal of responsibility. So don't just do it because it's like, oh, well, organic reach is down on pages, so I'll just move to a group and I'll just use it exactly the same way. Like
Yeah, exactly.
That goes against the whole point of them. But okay, so for example, our Facebook group are most of them are our customers. They are our most loyal followers. So any investment we make in that group is great investment. We would never talk down to them. Like some of these screenshots that I had, I mean, they were downright rude. I would not speak to anybody like that, let alone someone who I consider to be my most valuable lead. We can turn our Facebook members into customers if they're not already. We have a high conversion rate from our Facebook group to sales because we nurture them, and it's
they know, like, and trust you.
Yes,
really.
exactly right. Yes.
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of time in our group starting conversations, sharing valuable content, doing live videos, running polls, answering all their questions. We have a policy. If you ask a marketing related question in that group, someone will answer it. We encourage the other members to answer the question, but if an answer remains unanswered, my business partner and I go in and we answer that question.
Sure.
And so it's valuable. And I think that as a result, it's win-win. They get a lot of value out of this free resource, but we also get to know our customers, so that what I described before, where someone contacts me and says, I've got a speaking opportunity and I've never heard of them before, that doesn't happen.
Can I ask one last thing? If you have a group and you have a productized business, or you have a service that you can offer for that, if it's coaching, if it's a book, if it's a course, do you sell that in the group? Or are these the people, and this is where I think the answer will be, are these people your super fans that will already follow you on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, wherever, that they'll already know that you've got that?
Yeah.
And you use those platforms as the opportunity to talk about that, not putting it in your group.
Exactly. I don't sell in my group. Not overtly like, hey guys, here's a hot offer. But actually the members of the group do a lot of the selling for me. They'll say, because we run tactical masterclasses, and we've had members of the group jump in the group and say, I just finished my call with Mia on the lead generation masterclass. It was so good. I really enjoyed it. I got so much out of it. Thank you. And then other members of the group are saying, oh, what's this tactical masterclass? So you don't need to do that. I don't. And exactly as you said, they do follow you on other channels. A tip, like a little hack, is I post in my Facebook group as Mia, but sometimes, just to make sure that the people in the group are following our Facebook page or our Instagram page, I will post on Facebook and then I will share that post in the group, just so that people can go, oh, there's a public group that I'm not part of. But interestingly, anywhere, like say on our website where we have a direct link to our socials, the Facebook link actually takes you to our group, not to our Facebook page, because we invest more in our group.
Sure.
That's where the value is.
Yep. Nice. All right. Great conversation. I think that was a good one.
Yeah, me too.
I know it's a heat of the moment kind of thing, and I mean, I like a conversation when it's just like it's fresh. Because that way it makes the conversation more dynamic. I know if I did this with you in a couple more weeks, we'd be very much more reserved about it, and that you'd probably be more reflective and whatnot. But I like that kind of a bit of tension there, which works. But I think you've got a very level, cool head about this anyway, so perfect. Now, Mia, I've mentioned Idiello at the start there. Do you want to point some people to your group or to your platform, whatever it might be, if they're interested in it?
Sure. So Idiello, we're all about helping brands and professionals DIY their marketing. They can find us at idiello.com. I'm going to spell it just because
please do.
we came up with this great name, Idiello. So that's idiello.com. Our Facebook group, if you want to come and check it out, is the Idiello Creative Marketing Lab. And yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation. I thought it was fantastic.
Thanks so much for coming on, Mia. I know you've got another person within your business, Lana.
Yeah.
And maybe we have to have a conversation with her and yourself at one time and talk a bit more about what it is you do, because that might help some creative designers market their business better. So I'd love to do that maybe one day soon.
Yeah, we'd love that. Then you'd have 2 fiery marketers and not just one.
And I'll just sit here very quietly and let you guys talk. All right. Well, thanks so much, guys, for listening. If you're listening to this on Spotify, how you going? If you're listening to this, however, on Apple Podcasts, and that's your chosen platform, please leave a review. That would be very much appreciated. And I will speak to you in the next one. Cheers.